Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. So I thought I'd talk about something a little unusual, and that's invisibility. When we are born and then we come in with a bunch of karmas, and then hopefully we stumble into some kind of spiritual practice. And from that point forward, our job is to try to untangle ourselves from the conditioning that we came in with, so that we can have more spaciousness and freedom in our lives, and so that we can respond to situations fresh and new, actually, as they're happening, rather than responding to things in this sort of formulaic, rote, programmed way. But not only to become less entangled, but to actually try to avoid new entanglement. And I've talked about this before. It's not possible to totally avoid new entanglement, especially if you happen to live through the ages of 13 to 17. In any case, once we become a little more aware, we really try to do that. And then as time goes by, we begin to see more and more what that process of entanglement actually looks like, what it entails. We begin to kind of get schooled in the things that we're doing that are possibly causing more entanglement. And we slowly begin to not just get out of new karmas, but really learn the fine details and all the ins and outs of how new karmas get created, how new conditioning happens, how we respond in a karmically inflected way. We respond through our realm visions. We respond in a way that is not really appropriate for the situation. We begin to see how very long term that comes back and talks to us. How then some other things happen and we have to respond, and we have to use our energy responding to those things, and etc. Normally, in ordinary Mindsville, when we have a problem or we get into an entanglement with someone or some situation or some circumstance, we try to take action to fix it. One of the biggest questions that human beings spend their lives asking is, what should I do? Right? And it's usually, I have to go talk to this person, or I have to try to fix this, or I have to do something to make this better. And it usually is something very extroverted that we think we have to do to fix something. Really, a large percentage of the time, not all the time, but a large percentage of the time, the answer is duck and cover. The answer is don't do anything. The answer is become invisible, or try to be under the radar of the forces that are trying to entice you back into responding in a karmically programmed way. This is very hard for us to learn. I remember when I was in my teens and I first started reading the I Ching. And the I Ching is a very late text, a late version of that same oracle, that it was Confucianized at some point and made into this book of morals. And it has a kind of central protagonist who was this late middle-aged male courtier in the Chinese court. And, a lot of the time in this Confucianized version of the I Ching, a lot of the time the advice is the modest man will withdraw into his chambers and close the doors and wait for the storm to blow over. And I remember, in my teens, I just thought that was horrifying. I actually still used to talk about it up until very recently. That terrible I Ching. They're always telling you to retire into your chambers. It's what idiots. We should be out there doing, fighting, fixing, right? We're tantrikas. One of the greatest tantrikas that ever lived, Padmasambhava, was burned at the stake for being too out there. He had a view and a practice that was counter to the dominant view and practice of his day. And so they burned him. Yeah. So the other part of the story is he wasn't really killed by it because he was so enlightened. So I don't really know. But when it comes to avoiding new karma, I've learned the hard way. And even now that I know it, it's still hard because I don't want to be invisible. I like being engaged. I'm a very engaged person. I even like fighting. It's kind of counter to my personality to try to be more invisible. But I feel like that's kind of what my whole life is trying to teach me, the value of that. Who would have thought? And the more I go along, the more I experience circumstances and particular people who might draw me into karmic entanglement. I mean, including students who want always, there's nothing special about any of you guys, but, students are always trying to engage the teacher on the level of their karmas. And kind of karmas are trying to get what their karmas want. Right? And it's always a good thing to withdraw a little bit from that. Like, you're really talking to a possessed person when you're talking to someone in that circumstance. And there's sort of like possessed circumstances too, really. And we shouldn't really try to fight those most of the time. So learning how to be skillfully invisible, or to do skillful duck and covering, or skillful withdrawing, and knowing when you actually have to be aggressive and intervene in something, boy, that takes a lot of skill. I certainly don't have that down. But I think that's what I'm trying to learn in this portion of my life. When it is required to use force or to engage with a strong force that's quote-unquote negative, it's not really negative, but you know what I mean, something that would entangle you. When do you need to repel that with force? And when is the best thing to do to just draw the curtains and let whatever it is do its scary dance until it goes somewhere else? But I'm learning more and more that invisibility is called for more often than aggression or than some sort of aggressive intervention. And this is part of protecting our practice. To not be so extrovert and overt about what we're doing. Of course, that runs completely counter to our culture. Everybody is out there selling themselves. And to sit by and not do that is really hard. I have to say for myself that when I see people who are also doing spiritual teaching out there sort of shopping their wares and bragging and all that stuff, I don't want to do that, but part of me feels jealous that they're so wanton about it, And I feel like I could never get away with that. I mean, internally I couldn't because I just see it too clearly. But part of me still wants to do it. Some fraction of me still wishes I could just be that rampantly self-aggrandizing. So it's very, very difficult, especially in this culture, to be learning about the value of invisibility and the value of just kind of keeping your head down and doing your practice and letting whatever happens, happens. But what does that sound like? That is like what condition you want to be in when you're self-realized. That whatever happens is happening and it's fine. That we're not always intervening in everything. And that we're engaging playfully, we're not engaging because we're trying to get something out of people or get something from life. We're engaging because we enjoy engagement. I think I have that part down. I do love engaging with life. But the other part of it, which is engaging to like make something happen, is the part that we really have to work on. And when we engage aggressively, the only real reason to do that is to protect our practice. or anything else, who cares? Right? And that could mean lots of different things. Protecting our practice, we need a place to practice, we need, food and stuff like that. But the use of invisibility is something that is really interesting to consider and very, very difficult to put into practice, I find anyway. The other part of it is that when we do encounter karmically difficult situations, in situations of potential entanglement or just things that are painful, then we sometimes have this attitude that we're going to discover on our own by sort of effortfully massaging these situations. We're going to discover what the learning opportunity is. And it's this sort of heavy, thankless task, really, to do that. And it feels kind of sad to have to do that, like with things that are painful. Because we're really still operating, in that case, with ordinary mind, where we're trying to avoid pain. And we're operating as if we're separate individuals, making reality become this learning opportunity. It doesn't feel very good. However, those entangled situations, or ones that are potentially entangled, if we really use our practice to observe them and feel into them and listen to them, then we can find how wisdom is talking to us. What is wisdom asking us to do? Remember that the only thing wisdom, aka our own essence nature, the only thing it's communicating it to us about is sadhana. It isn't interested in what happened on Orphan Black last week, unless that has something to do with your sadhana. Right? Whatever situation you're in is sadhana, not because you are kind of forcefully and artificially making it into that because it sounds good and you really don't want it to be so painful. But it actually is sadhana. It's actually some circumstance that's arisen, as painful as it might be, that is the wisdom that you are supposed to be working with in your practice. So if you can actually get in touch with that, then you can have a conversation with wisdom about you and what you need to be relaxing or letting go of or working on. And then it becomes a partnership. It's no longer just you forcefully making it into something maybe it's not. And this requires observation. And again, it's that sort of position that courtier I hated when I was 14 always would take up in the I Ching, of observing what's going on, like being a keen observer. And it's not that distanced observation where we're setting ourselves up as the witness. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about using our clarity to really let situations talk to us. And you can even ask, what is the sadhana here? What is this compacted, painful situation of loss or threat or something, whatever, there's a million of them. How did I get here? Why am I here? What is the wisdom here? And what is the sadhana here? What is being asked of me in the sense of my spiritual practice? That's probably the best question. What is being asked of me in this situation? And then you can have that real sense of a partnership with wisdom rather than just a sense that you're being put upon or you have to kind of get through this with some slogans. You know what I mean? Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.